problems that are caused by more marijuana being available in a community. We're going to have more crime. We're going to have more addiction problems.
What are you basing that on?
Really?
A law professor, Jonathan Adler, corrected House Speaker Matt Huffman.
Certainly don't see evidence of significant negative effects on crime.
And any product that is legal today will be legal after the bill's passing. It does not reduce home growth amounts or increase the tax rate.
Trying to make things unappealing to children, trying to make it so our children don't have to walk down the sidewalk and inhale plumes of marijuana smoke.
They ignored the will of the voters. Don't tell me that people didn't know what they're voting for. Voters are smarter than my colleagues want to give them credit for.
Now in today's show, we got big news coming out of Ohio where a recently proposed bill, which we discussed on the channel, that will reduce your plant count from 12 to 6 has actually passed the Senate. But also we got a competing bill which was introduced, and in that bill it'll keep the plant counts the same, but it'll make a few different changes. And also Senator Matt Huffman of the Ohio House of Representatives, he was fact-checked when he falsely claimed that herb increases crime. We're going to get into all that today, but let's start off right here with the Ohio Senate, where they passed SB 56, which would change the laws that the voters approved back in 2023.
This measure would still have to go to the House and be passed there, and of course then signed by the governor, so it's not the law yet. But this would mean big changes to Ohio's recreational marijuana law, a law that voters approved overwhelmingly in 2023. Home growers would be limited to 6 plants per household, down from 12. And don't even think of sharing your weed. That would be against the law. Right now, it's illegal for a driver to smoke. The changes to the law would make it illegal for anyone in the car to smoke. And it would ban outdoor smoking. And it would let your landlord prohibit you from growing and smoking in a rental apartment or home. Republican senators appear to want to blame the voters, pointing out that voters in 2023 were voting to write a new law, not enshrine marijuana in the Constitution.
Not in the Constitution, but in the Ohio Revised Code, knowing in full knowledge that the General Assembly could change it at any time.
The changes that we made in this bill are very reasonable.
And they say they're not thwarting the will of the people, only tinkering with the law to make it safer.
Trying to make things unappealing to children, trying to make it so our children don't have to walk down the sidewalk and inhale plumes of marijuana smoke.
But that law was passed by nearly 60% of voters.
57% doesn't tell you that the voters knew what they were voting for and appreciated that.
I didn't say that, Tom. Everybody had probably a different reason, a different provision of the language that was their primary consideration or one of their primary considerations for voting yes. The most important thing I can put out here, the consumer experience is uninhibited.
Basically, they ignored the will of the voters. Don't tell me that people didn't know what they're voting for. Voters are smarter than my colleagues want to give them credit for sometimes.
The bill now moves over to the House, which blocked a similar law last year. But here's what's different now. Presiding over the House is House Speaker Matt Huffman. Last session, he was the president of the Senate, which passed that similar bill, so it would seem likely that Huffman would be able to get enough votes to get this thing passed. But for now, it's still going to the House. We're not sure when they will take it up.
So as you guys can see, this is a situation where the voters have voted and the people have spoken, but it seems that the lawmakers are trying to subvert the will of the people. And in particular, one reason that they're citing for that is the increase in crime and also trying to protect the children. We've heard this a number of times before. They're always trying to protect the kids, but they're citing the crime. Actually, Matt Huffman has been fact-checked when he spoke about this. So let's hop into that because he made that claim and it was false.
They say the legalization leads to increased crime. Fact check, it doesn't. And the GOP leaders say they have a right to change it since they don't think the voters knew exactly what they were voting for.
Problems that are caused by more marijuana being available in a community. We're going to have more crime. We're going to have more addiction problems.
What are you basing that on?
Really? The more alcohol is available, the more people drink, and the more bad behavior results. And that's what happens with marijuana and other substances that cause people to think poorly.
But marijuana law professor Jonathan Adler corrected House Speaker Matt Huffman.
Certainly don't see evidence of significant negative effects on crime or increases in crime. that some people fear. And there's some evidence that suggests at least some sorts of crime may in fact decline. It appears to reduce highway fatalities, appears to reduce some types of violent crime.
So that's really refreshing to see that professionals come out and actually fact check when these false claims are made. And a lot of people push these false narratives, and that sums up to propaganda. And when you're pushing false propaganda, it's usually for a reason. Now, it was great to see that the Ohio GOP lawmaker actually filed a bill to revise the voter-approved laws with less sweeping changes than the Senate passed measure. And this takes us back to what I was talking about earlier, where we actually got two competing bills right now. So let's have a look at those two competing bills and how they differ.
Ohio lawmakers are pushing forward with changing the state's laws.
For State House reporter Natalie Fahmy joins us now live to tell us what those changes might look like. Natalie?
Jared, Jennifer, there were two competing bills in the Ohio State House right now. One in the Senate that makes drastic changes to the state's law, and a new proposal in the Ohio House that in some ways takes a similar approach, but in others is lighter.
Amanda from Cleveland asked, what are the lawmakers trying to do? There are Senate Bill 56 and House Bill 160. Both make dozens of restrictions to cannabis access, but most notably, SB 56 limits THC content and reduces home growing to 6 plants. HB 160 also limits THC, but keeps home growing the same. Marty from the Sandusky area commented, wondering why the lawmakers are even making these changes.
House Bill 160 is sponsored by Representative Brian Stewart. He says he wants to make changes to the recreational marijuana law without ignoring the will of the voters.
When this is marketed as regulate like alcohol, we're doing that here.
While the bill does not go as far as restricting home grow, as its counterpart in the Senate does, or increasing taxes on recreational marijuana, as was considered, the House bill caps the number of dispensaries allowed in the state at 350 and only makes it legal to smoke on your private residence. Plus, it decreases legal THC levels by 20%.
What's your basis for decreasing the THC level? Is that something that you've heard that constituents want?
If you look at, states that have legalized marijuana, they're all over the map. Some are at 60%, some are at 70%, some are less than that. So I believe Michigan is at 70%. So to have us at 70% would be competitive with other states.
We don't think that this is necessarily a potency argument, but a purity one. Anytime that you are taking the potency down like that, you're adding in other fillers to products, and we don't think that's beneficial to consumers.
The legislation also requires that any Delta-8 products, sometimes known as diet weed, be sold in dispensaries. Right now, the product can be sold anywhere and with no age restriction. There is bipartisan motivation to get that done.
Whether it's a full-out ban or it's putting guardrails around, I think that is a discussion that I believe that both sides of the aisle can find agreement on.
Stewart says he and other leaders are motivated to get something done by the time they break for summer, which is usually by the end of June.
Now, there are a number of issues to unpack here, and we'll discuss the home grow issue in a bit, but first off, we got to talk about the packaging and things being sold to kids. The Delta-8 stuff being sold at gas stations and all that type of stuff, I don't like that, and I personally think that they should be sold at places that require ID. Now, I'm not trying to bash any of the producers or sellers of these gummies and stuff like that, but it really does appeal and look like it's actual candy and can appeal to kids. So in that sense, we just got to make sure it's safe for the kids. I have no problem with that. But when it comes to things like dispensary caps, prices, and that type of stuff, Ohioans are already suffering with super high prices. And in fact, that's why a lot of people are turning towards home grows. So the fact that they keep the plant count the same, I think is fantastic. A lot of people were really upset with the fact that they were considering reducing the plant count from 12 to 6. Now, just a quick reminder, guys, if you're getting value from this video, please do like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And if you want to support us further, join the ICANN VIP Bean Club or cop some merch from the merch store. Now, a lot of people have described this new bill, HB 160, as less restrictive. So let's hear what people have to say about this bill as it compares to the previous bill.
Lawmakers just introduced another bill that would update Ohio's marijuana laws. This bill is being introduced in the House, so it's different from the one News 5 has been telling you about that was introduced in the Senate that would lower THC limits and also limit home growth. Ohioans overwhelmingly voted to legalize in 2023, but lawmakers have been trying to change it. The latest proposal is House Bill 160. Its sponsor says it aligns more with what Ohioans voted on when they legalized marijuana. The bill would cap THC levels for extract at 70%, and any product that is legal today will be legal after the bill's passing. It does not reduce home growth amounts or increase the tax rate. Representative Brian Stewart says Ohio's law needs adjustment, but it doesn't need to change dramatically.
Any idea that we're going to pass a law and it's just the law for the end of time and it's never subject to the democratic process and revision is not realistic.
The bill also states that any product with active THC will need to be sold through dispensaries, which would include Delta 8 products.
So that bill is a lot less restrictive, it keeps the plant count the same, and also does not increase taxes. So let me know what you guys think about that bill. One of the big changes that it will make is that it will reduce the limit for extracts from 90% to 70%. And another big change is that the Senate bill, which would have reduced the plant count from 12 to 6, had also come under criticism from advocates who argued that it would have effectively prevented people from smoking or vaping outside of private residences, for example, criminalizing consumption in one's own backyard. Now, how crazy would that be? You're vaping in your backyard, someone sees you, and you get in trouble. Now, it's also important to note that although the increased excise tax rate was removed from the last Senate version, Governor Mike DeWine has separately indicated his plans to double the current tax rate via the budget process, raising it to 20%. So even though it may not be in that bill, don't think that we're going to get away with it, because he's still going to increase that tax through the budget process. Now, I do think that these are some less restrictive changes, especially comparing them to those changes backed by Matt Huffman last year, which would have eliminated home cultivation rights entirely for all Ohio adults and also criminalized all herb obtained anywhere other than a state licensed retailer. So we're making some progress in Ohio, but the thing is, if you give them an inch, then they want to take a mile. So you got to really be careful and keep these lawmakers in check. And I think that that's exactly what's happening when a lot of you guys have pushed back on that Senate bill, which would have limited the plant count from 12 to 6. So shout out to all the home growers and everyone who actually reached out to the Ohio representatives, local and state reps, to let them know that they're not in approval or not in agreement with what's happening. So let me know what you guys think about this entire issue. It's a really interesting one, and we'll keep tabs on it. And something else that we're keeping tabs on is those tariffs and how they're going to impact home growers and also the wider community. So if you want to find out more about that, check that video out, because it's coming up right now.